For the longest time, I wondered, which is it? Is it the path of least resistance? Or is it the path of discipline and hustling and hard work that leads to true freedom, that leads to perhaps enlightenment? And I've experienced both, and I've experimented with both along my journey, but neither seemed to produce the results I was expecting or have the effect I wanted it to have. And then I've listened to many people pleading for the path of least resistance. And then I've also listened to many others who shun the path of least resistance and say to stay away from it, just like you have to stay away from your comfort zone if you seek true freedom. You know, Abraham Hicks always mentions the path of least resistance is your path, is your way to anything you want in life, is your way to your dream life. But also I've listened to spiritual teachers, not necessarily spiritual, but like successful motivational influencers, let's say, who said to stay away as much as possible from the path of least resistance, comparing it to the comfort zone and how much it could kill your dreams, how much it could regress you rather than progress you. But more importantly, the reason I wondered for so long is because for the longest time I have been seeking freedom. And I mean like real, truly free. How to be really, truly free. True freedom. And that is not just freedom, not just financial or physical freedom, like location freedom. It is mental freedom, mindset freedom, freedom of standards, free of standards, free of systems, free of societal expectations, societal standards, free from freedom of the mind, freedom of the body, freedom of the soul, free of systems, of dogmatic systems, of dogmas, and even freedom from reaching my infinite potential or trying to figure what it is or how to seek it out. The freedom of even trying to seek out my infinite potential or my higher self or my purpose or what's my meaning in life or what am I doing in life. And that to me is the essence of freedom, and it perhaps even is the essence of spirituality. The freedom of just being, the ability to just be regardless of everything and anything around you, everything and everyone around you, regardless of whatever, who says what or what says who. But that brought me to the contemplation of which is it, which is the path, because I've tried and I've heard so many people say this and so many say the opposite. Is it the path of least resistance or is it the path of discipline and hard work? They tell you to work hard now and, you know, enjoy your time later. Work hard now so you could live happily later, so you could be free later, you know, when you grow old and you have spent most of your life doing something you're not passionate about or doing something that did not fill you with energy, with zealous, with life, with living. And then when you grow older, you have the time to experiment with life, to experience life to its fullest, to go to new places, to meet new people. So the question here is, which is it? What if there is a path that combines the both of them? What if there is a path that is the path of least resistance and the path of discipline? Because, you know, I've always believed that this is our birthright, that this should be, that this freedom, that this enlightenment, that this remembrance of who you truly are, the remembrance of your higher self, is everyone's birthright, and it is accessible to each and every one of us. So is it in the seeking and the knowing and the trying to pursue, to know more, to acquire all of this knowledge that's going to enlighten you, that's going to take you to your path of freedom? How is it so when it is not possible for some people to do such a thing? Some people are just incapable of this pursuit of seeking their higher self, of seeking their knowledge, of seeking purpose, of seeking whatever, you know. What did I struggle with? How am I? What is blocking me? What's limiting me? Some people are just incapable of that. But yet, it is their birthright to be free. It is their birthright to spirituality, to access higher dimensions, to access higher states of being, to access enlightenment. So how could it be in the pursuit and the struggles and the hustle and the knowledge when some people aren't able of doing so and so? And what I realized is that it's not about how much you know, or it's not about what you do, or how much you seek out this truth, or how much you struggle, or how much you hustle, or how hard you work. And if I could surmise the whole experience in one thing, it would be to just live true to yourself, to be as authentic as possible, to be the most authentic version of yourself. And so whenever it comes to what traumatized me in the past, what's blocking me, what's keeping me restricted, what's keeping me from my freedom, what's keeping me from enlightenment, what's keeping me from the abundance, from the love, from the bliss, from the joy, from the peace that I seek, it's not that you have to figure out what is that blocked you from your past. What is it that you're dealing with and struggling with from your past, and it's limiting you from your infinite potential? But rather, it is just to be true to yourself and experience yourself as authentic as possible without guilt. It's not that you think, if you feel as if something from your past is traumatizing you, and now whenever you indulge in something that has to do with it, you feel shame, you feel embarrassed, you feel guilt, you feel regret, then just do not. The point, the key here is to not feel those feelings, to not feel those emotions. And I'm not talking, absolutely not, I'm not telling you to be your most authentic ego self, the most authentic version of the ego, because that also I struggled with. How am I supposed to just be myself? What if myself is very low vibration, of very low frequency? What if myself is struggling with process addiction, with substance addiction, with, you know, intense, constant pleasure, high instant pleasure indulgence? What if my true self, what if my just being myself is to completely waste my time, to aimlessly hang out, to eat bad, to live bad, to have messed up sleeping patterns, is to be non-healthy, is to eat junk, to not go for a run, to not go for a jog, to not be healthy by any means? What if it's just all of low vibration frequency? What if that's just being myself? You know, what if someone's just being themselves? It is this. It is committing depravity or just, you know, heinous acts in the name of being themselves. Could that still lead them to their freedom, to their path of enlightenment? But that, what I figured, is being the ego, is being true to the ego, being controlled, being slave to the ego, living in shame, living a slave to your desires, living a slave. And that's not your most authentic self. That's not what I mean by your most authentic self. Your most authentic self is the one that's non-attached to the ego. is the one that's non-attached to your desires, uncontrolled by your desires, by the ego's desires. It's the one that's just being in the present, not needing. It's the realization that you do not need anything to be whole, to feel good, to cope, to avoid, to escape. Because all that you are escaping from, all that you're coping, avoiding is being yourself. Is whatever shame you're struggling with, is whatever embarrassment, is whatever humiliation, is whatever fear, is whatever stress, is whatever conditional love you're struggling with. And that means that you're not true to yourself. Because in being true to yourself, there is no shame in whatever you felt or whatever you experienced in your past. It's to just experience it with grace, to embrace it. That's embracing yourself, embracing all that made you feel bad, embracing all that hurt you. And once you embrace it, you're not attached to it, you're not defined by it, and you do not identify with it. And when that's the case, you do not struggle to cope with it, you do not have external desires to avoid it, you do not feel the need to indulge in high instant dopamine release activities in order for you to feel good about yourself, about your life. And that's what I mean by being true to yourself. And that combines the both, because in your discipline, that's the path of least resistance. That's when you don't feel shame about anything. That's when you're not insecure about anything you struggled with or anything you're struggling with. That's when you're not defined by your past. That's when you're just living the path of least resistance, flowing with the wind, flowing like water, embracing all that you struggled with. Something hurt you, sure, I'm not gonna feel bad about it. You hurt someone even in your past. I'm not gonna, sit in regret and guilt and shame. You've done something in the past that, embarrassed you, humiliated you, made you look bad, made you look stupid. I'm not gonna ponder over it. I'm not gonna pity myself over such a thing. Because I'm living the path of least resistance. So rather than having to go through shadow work, rather than trying to figure out what did this to me, what should I do, how do I heal, how do I let go of what traumatized me, it is just to go right through it. And I'm not talking about the competitive way of going right through it and struggling and fighting through it. It's just seeing it for what it is. It is something that happened in your life, and it's something that you experienced in this lifetime, and you're just going to embrace it. You're just not going to be defined by it. You're just not going to be attached to it. That's being the most authentic version of yourself. That's living as your higher self. That's reconnecting with your higher self. That's remembering who you truly are. That's remembering that you're pure conscious energy, and you take on the form of whatever you define yourself with, whatever you identify with. You manifest, you are the manifestation of consciousness. You are the manifestation of your higher self. And whatever you radiate in your energetic field is whatever you become. So, and being disciplined is that you do not, combining the path of discipline, is that you do not feel bad about those things, is that you do not pity yourself for what you experience, is that you do not live in shame. You do not leave yourself to just live in shame, to cope with that shame, to need to avoid that shame, to need to avoid your insecurities. That's the discipline aspect of it, and that's combining the path of least resistance and the disciplined path. And that's your path to anything you want. That's your path to true, real freedom. Freedom of standards, freedom of the mind, freedom of the ego, freedom of the needs and desires. That's your path to enlightenment. So the next time, just remember to be yourself, to embrace whatever the ego is struggling with. The ego had struggled for so long because it needed survival, it needed to cope in order to enhance its survival, it needed to avoid, it needed to assign false meanings, you needed to live behind masks and insecurities to enhance its survival, to make sense of life, to make sense of whatever hurt it, and it could not fathom it, it could not understand it clearly and well. No one clarified it to it. So it clarified it to itself by assigning false meanings, by living behind insecurities, by living behind shame, by living in guilt. Now it makes sense for it. Now it makes sense to it. And it's able to enhance its survival because it's not able to understand what leads to what. Why am I feeling this? Why did this happen to me? It just cannot keep on living. And that decreases its survival rate. And so the next time, just embrace yourself. Just be authentic. Just say, not today. I'm not going to be defined by this today. The next time it pops out something of your insecurities, of your shame, of your fears, of your struggles, of your stress, of your addictions, if something comes out. I've just done a whole video about how addiction could be used in your good. How you could actually use addiction in your favor. Because we are addicted to the stress, to feeding the negative, to feeding and feeling the negative. But you could use it in the other way around. You could turn things around. The next time it pops out, just say, not today. I'm not gonna let this define me. I'm not gonna let this make me live in fear, in shame, in struggle, in distress today. And then you'll be shifting your life around. Then you'll be living your most authentic self. You'll be remembering, you'll be reconnecting with who you truly are, your higher self, your pure conscious energy state of being. And that's all I wanted to share. Thank you so much for sharing this with me, all of you lovely infinite beings. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel because it helps this video find its way to many more others who might actually need it.